There's a report today about the children of Sophia Winkleman, the actress, and Lord Frederick Windsor. The children Maud and Isabella have been given tablets at school, and Sophia Winkleman is distressed about this. The argument is very interesting. On the one hand, you've got the idea that tablets may be exposing children to the dangers of the internet. I think that's the least of the problems. Screen time, I think, is dangerous at worst, particularly for toddlers and for small children, and distracting at best. Now, I think part of the problem is the overwhelming sensation of colour and activity. It's a passive experience, whereas at that time, when children are very young, they need active experiences. They need to get their hands on things. They need to be doing things, not being not wobbling in the corner, observing or barely observing a kaleidoscopic display of completely incomprehensible imagery. They need time to focus on reading and interactive activity, even limiting their time on television to 1 hour or half an hour each day, I think is not deeply meretricious. The constant bombardment of information, of commercials, of visual and oral challenge. I think the dangers of a child who has been exposed to such things, and most children have. I mean, it's not any criticism of parents, because this is the way parenting is done today. I just think it's wrong. And the dangers emerge at the age of 7 or 8, and then further up into schooling. And it was particularly obvious going back into teaching in a school after COVID, when children have been so exposed for such a prolonged time to a diet of screen entertainment. It produces a lack of concentration, a lack of engagement, a lack of self-sustainment. It pulls away from the self. So on the one hand, it encourages isolation. On the other hand, it encourages an inability to forge proper social relationships. It's a failure to process work. It's a failure to do work. It's a failure to concentrate on their own. It's a demand for constant noise, for constant distraction. There's even academic work suggesting that 1-year-old boys, but not girls, who have been exposed to too much screen time have a very high chance of being diagnosed with autism because they've watched so much television. I don't think that means they are necessarily heavily on the autistic spectrum. It's just that I think there are reports which are suggesting that that exposure to television and to tablets produces a sort of brain activity which is very similar. And I think it's going to take some time before science and medicine learns to distinguish between the two. But television and screen exposure has a huge effect on small children. I think it has a huge effect on all of us, but I think it's particularly marked on small children. And so all the papers, all the academic research needs qualification. But I think the least that can happen is that TV comes with a health warning. And there are two conclusions. The first is there's an assumption that schools are now equipping for distance learning and they're handing out tablets. Well, I think distance learning has a lot to recommend itself, but I think schools are rarely equipped to do it. And They simply see it as another way of managing a large group of children in a lesson. I don't think. I think one has to be very focused on what one's doing with distance learning. Secondly, I think we have to wonder if children are able to deal, if young children are able to deal healthily with tablets and televisions, and for these to be given to them without detriment to their health. I think that's a much bigger issue. I think the jury is out at the moment on both issues, but I think we should take steps to protect children as much as possible in the meantime. And a movement towards reduced television exposure is being recommended, and is something that I think would be good. And it is ironic that this is exactly the time when schools are finding the budgets and teachers are finding the opportunity to embrace new technology. I think they need more training. I think teachers need far more training about what they do with the new technology. Simply having a tablet in the class is not necessarily a benefit, and I think the evidence suggests it's likely to be more of a distraction and a danger than a benefit. But believe me, I'm a great advocate of distance learning in its right place and in its right form. I don't think it's right for small children. I think it is right for older children, but I think it needs to be handled significantly more in a significantly more focused way than it is at the moment. There we are. My thoughts on this.